Hello everyone, this is G and I'm back for the second or third video today. I've kind of lost count. But anyway, yes, it is another video about the Jay Lee situation because I'm pissed off and I'm hopped up. So I'm going to be talking about this because the more I learn about it and the more I see, the angrier I become. And you know what? I'm egotistical enough to believe that I have a right to say something, so I'm going to say something. So here's the thing. I was watching a Thinking Critical video earlier today, and they showed some of the tweets made by Richard Pace and another tweet made by Mr. I'm turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so, Tim Doyle. And that got me all riled up, and so I decided to make this video. Alright, so here's the thing. Let's start with Richard, I think I'm Wolverine, Pace. I will admit, Rich Pace can draw, but dear God, is he an awful person. But here's the thing. So, he writes, has Jay Lee asked for his cover not to be used by the leader of the hate group yet? When the leader of the hate group was indicating Lee was on board, I can't see King as the villain. Right? So, as I said in my previous video today, this is about making Jay Lee bow and kowtow. This is about making him submit. To which I hope he does not. And I do hope Sean Gordon Murphy is watching this because believe me, buddy, you're next. Your friends in the industry will tear you down as quickly as they can. They will do their level best to destroy you because they're not friends. They're bullies and cowards. Anyway, so this is Richard Pace. We then have Richard again, actually. This is what happens when you forget how many slides are in your own video. But how's the thing? But here again, right? Richard is again harping on the cover, right? Now that he, being Jay Lee, knows what Comicsgate is, what's he doing about the cover? Looks like being angry at Tom King. Newsflash, he has every right to be mad at Tom King, Rich, who has been continuously attacked by CG already, is all he's doing. Oh, you mean Comicsgate, which criticized Tom King for his low-T, wimpy depiction of heroes like Mr. Miracle and Batman? Because to my knowledge, that's all that Comicsgate has done. They've said, we don't like your depictions of our favorite male heroes. Why are you making them such wimps? So if that's an attack, then y'all need to grow a pair and learn how to be men and take criticism. But anyway, right, so we have this, right, so it's focusing on the fact that he, at least as of yet, Jay Lee has not called for the cover to be pulled. And I hope he doesn't. Then we have Tim Doyle. I talked about him at length in another video. But this was the tweet I was originally looking for in my original video. I didn't know where it was. I couldn't find it on Tim's timeline or whatever it's called on Twitter. Because I remember watching a Clownfish TV video and hearing about this. And I couldn't find it. So here it is, right? This is what Tim Doyle says to Richard Pace, right? He's not man enough to actually go on Insta and go to Jay Lee and say this to him, but he says this to Richard Pace. Would it have been great for Tom to do this privately? Sure. So Tim is acknowledging, he's acknowledging that Tom should have went about this in a more private, professional manner, right? But here's the thing. Now it continues. But whether Jay knew about Comicsgate before or not, he knows now. And Tom pointing out Jay was working with a hate group, he's not, unless you count DC. Is not Tom's fault. Yes, it is, because Tom tried to ruin his career for no reason. Jay's response is lacking and manipulative. I don't give an F about his dead dog regarding this. So again, this is the humanity, this is the compassion shown by Tim Doyle, all because Jay Lee did a cover for Cyberfrog. This is the mainstream industry. These are the people who are allowed to be in the mainstream industry to go completely unchecked. People like him. And then we have a tweet from Ramon. I wish it was Razor Ramon, but Scott Hall, I don't know if he has a Twitter, but that's not the Ramon I'm talking about. We have Ramon Villalobos, right? And he says here, I can't believe, or rather, just says can't believe the Jay Lee discourse is still going. Why wouldn't it be Ramon? Here's the thing, the last IG post is dumb. So now Jay Lee is dumb for expressing his dismay and his anger about being pulled into drama he didn't need. Again, mainstream comic pro, artist in the mainstream industry, has worked for DC. DC, you have a problem with the people you are hiring. But anyway, it continues. And he shows more anger to people being upset by his association with Comicsgate. People have no right to be upset about his association with anything. Then Comicsgate themselves. Comicsgate did nothing wrong. We were mostly willing to accept he's dumb. Again, so a person which has clout in this business, it can outdraw your behind, Ramon. But he's dumb now. But I had no idea he was this dumb. So, what is that saying from, I think it's Socrates or Plato? It's one of them. It's to the effect of like, when the argument is lost, all the loser has left is slander. This is pretty much what that is, right? He can't actually create an argument against what people have been saying, against the criticism, so he just goes, oh, Jay Lee is down, he's down, he's down, he's down, he's down. Look in the mirror, Ramon. If you're looking for a dummy, look in the mirror, Ramon. But then he continues, I'm not saying don't hire or support Jay. At least, okay, fine, I will give you that. At least you aren't trying to interfere in his business. Not yet, anyway. Do whatever the F you want. But it's very clear what he's doing. He's telling people how upset he is because his dog died and he's being called into drama that Tom King started because Tom King doesn't know when to leave people alone. Because to me, that's what Jay Lee is doing. But cancel culture is not the problem here. Of course it's not Ramon, because you're part of cancel culture. So obviously you are not going to call cancel culture the problem when you're part of it. But he goes on to say misogyny, transphobia, homophobia, white supremacy in comics is. Focus on that. Okay, I'm going to do what you said, Ramon. I'm going to focus on the white supremacy in this case. Let's review. Jay Lee, right? Jay Lee is a Korean-American comics artist known for his interior illustrations and cover work for various publishers, including Marvel Comics, DC Comics, Image Comics, and Dynamite Entertainment. So Jay Lee is an Asian man, right? So he's a person of color of Korean descent. Ethan Van Sciver is a white man who once worked for DC Comics, right? So let's see here. Asian creator and a white creator. Both have affiliations, or previous affiliations in Ethan's case, with DC Comics. So let's see what happens. Ethan's response, as I showed it earlier in another video, to the drama, right, that has unjustly, unfairly been visited upon Jay, right? He says, for what it's worth, I love your art, Jay. I was happy to be able to hire you, and Cyberfrog fans love the covers you drew. So, we have a white man who hired an Asian man to do work for him, and he's happy with that work, and his fans are happy with that work. So where's the white supremacy again? Where's the white supremacy? A white supremacist would not have hired an Asian man to do anything for him. Where's the white supremacy? I don't see it. This, however, is Tom King, another white man who's currently working for DC Comics. And let's take a look here. This, of course, is the tweet he put out, right, trying to ruin Jay Lee's life, right, saying, today DC put out an alternate cover for Warshash, I still can't pronounce it, I'm sorry, people, R, by Jay Lee, who has also done covers for Comicsgate, a hate group. Again, look in the mirror for the hate group. DC does not consult creators on alternate covers. I reached out to them to express my deep disappointment. far as I'm concerned, this is the cover to Rashash, whatever, #1. I'm sorry, Blue Wind. I can't remember how to say it. But again, you have another white guy who's currently working for DC, and he's trying to ruin an Asian man's career. Now, how do you know that he's trying to ruin an Asian man's career? Well, Mr. Lee himself responded, saying in part, and of course this is on Jay Lee's Instagram, right? He says, he writes in part, I'm focusing on the middle part here. I'm writing this because I'm angry. These irresponsible tweets are not harmless. They do not, I want to repeat that, they do not just go away. They have real-world consequences. They can take away your job, your life, your memories. June, who I believe is his wife or his significant other, and I were robbed of a special day. Of course, of this being the mourning of their dog, Loki, who had sadly passed away recently. So no, we're not all good, which is, of course, referencing Tom King's later tweet saying that, oh, I spoke to Jay Lee, we're all good now. No, you aren't. As we can see, right, Jay Lee, right, is pointing out how these tweets, which Tom King hasn't pulled down yet, mind you, can impact his world in a very negative way. So Ethan, a white man, gave him a job and impacted his life in a positive way. Whereas Tom King, another white guy, right, impacted his life in a very negative way for no reason at all other than that he did work with someone he doesn't like, this case being Ethan Van Sciver. So where is the white supremacy again? Because it looks like it's coming from DC. It looks like it's coming from DC Comics. Because Tom King is currently working for DC and he tried to cancel this Asian creator. Whereas Ethan, who no longer works for DC, gave the man a job, hired him, and told him that he did good work. So where's the white supremacy again? Because it looks like it's coming from the mainstream pros and from DC Comics in particular. Right, we then have Richard Pace, right, the wannabe Wolverine, and in my opinion, embarrassment to Canada, right, who's also, again, criticizing, unjustly, unfairly criticizing. And again, Rich is white, right, he's white, and he's unjustly criticizing Jay for having done a cover with Ethan Van Sciver. We then have Tim, I'm turning Japanese, Doyle, saying that the death of Jay's dog doesn't matter, that he doesn't give a F about it, saying that his response to real-life, real-world drama that he had nothing to do with, didn't know about until now, was manipulative, right? And again, accusing him of working with a hate group, which is not true. So again, we have Tim Doyle, a white man in mainstream comics, or at least working around or in occasionally, doing work for mainstream comics. We have Richard Pace doing work for mainstream comics. We have Tom King doing work for mainstream comics. All three of them white men, all three of them trying to oppress an Asian man. Whereas we have Ethan, who is Comicsgate, is Comicsgate #2, and he gave an Asian man a job. Oh my, where does the white supremacy lie? Where is it heavier? Looks like it's on DC. Looks like it's on DC side. If there's any white supremacy going on, it seems to be with them. Speaking of which, Jim Lee, you too are a creative Korean American comic book artist, writer, editor, and publisher. More importantly, Jim, you are the chief creative officer and publisher of DC Comics. If you want to hold true to the statement, Jim, you want to hold true to the statement that comics are good for you, then you need to clean house, Jim. You need to put your pencils down. Oops, sorry. You need to put your pencils down, stand up, straighten out your spine, and tell Tom and Rich and Tim and everybody else who would harass Jay Lee or any other person working at DC all because they did work for someone that they don't like, tell them that they need to cut it out or they're going to get fired. You need to stand up, do your job, and be a man, Jim. This is happening on your watch. You're allowing a fellow Korean American creator to be harassed by people, or at least by one person in your employ. Stand up, Jim. Stand up and do the right thing. Come to your brother's aid. If you care about comics, if you care about Batman, do what Batman would do. Stand up for Jay Lee and others. Anyway, now going back to Ramon Villalobos, he then says in another tweet, when there was misinformation about me during the Border Town stuff, it was extremely easy to get mad at people who assumed bad things about me. But I never forgot that Eric, in this case he means Eric Esquivel, and I'll get to that in a moment. He said that I never forgot that Eric put me in that situation, not random people online. Tom King is not a random person online, Ramon. But let's get into Border Town since he wanted to bring it up. For those who may not be aware or don't remember, Border Town was a comic on DC's Vertigo imprint, right there, Vertigo label, a few years ago. I think back in like February of 2018, right? So over 2 years ago now, right? This is the cover, so we're getting a snapshot right here of Mr. Villalobos' art. I'm not particularly impressed, but let's look at the bottom here, right? The three main people on your creative team are Eric Esquivel, the writer, Ramon Villalobos, and then Tamra Bonvillain. Let's examine each one. You have Eric Esquivel, who's the writer. He is biracial. He is of Irish and Mexican ancestry. This will become important in a minute. Follow me here. We then have Ramon Villalobos, a Latino man. We then have Tamra Bonvillain on colors. Tamra is a trans woman, right? So according to SJW doctrine, you have here a diverse creative team, right? A biracial man who identifies very strongly with his Latino heritage, a Latino man, and a trans woman, right? Diverse creative team, something that is prized and treasured in mainstream comics today. Well, let's take a look at a panel so we can see what they came up with when they worked together, right? When you take the colors from Tamra and the words from Eric and the art from excuse me. You take the art from Ramon. Let's see what happens when you put all their skills together. Let's take a look at a panel. So we have kind of bland colors from Tamra. We have very grainy art from Ramon. And we have Eric Esquivel pretty much creating a self-insert character with the lead character who we see here and giving us such gems of writing, such moving dialogue, such as, "Prove you're not a racist." Wow, okay, well, let's see. I listen to Japanese thrash metal when I work out. I follow Kumail Nanjiani on Twitter. I've seen Steel so many times I wore out the VHS tape. Oh, and I'm half Mexican. I think the person in the back is saying, "Oh my effing God." I agree. I don't necessarily agree with the effing part, but yeah, oh my God. That's how I felt reading this again. Oh my God, this is terrible. So this is what your diverse three-person lineup gave us. Bland colors, grainy art, and cringeworthy dialogue. Right? That's what we got from this. I'm half Mexican. I'm a half-breed, so there's no way I could be racist. Well, good thing to know. I guess if I ever go crazy and become a racist somehow, I will forever be protected by the fact that I myself am biracial. Right? I guess being a half-breed does help after all. Let us pray that I never go nuts, or more crazy than I already am, because of all the things I don't want to be, I certainly don't want to be a racist. Because guess what? You can be biracial and still be racist, because you're a racist jerk, Eric! But anyway, moving on. But here's the thing, and here's the part that I really wanted to focus on since Ramon wants to bring up Border Town. So I'm going to read this here because it's kind of small. It says, in 2018, Esquivel began writing Border Town, an ongoing comic series with art by Ramon Villalobos, right, at the center of a relaunch of DC's Vertigo imprint, right? Then it says, there's more stuff here, but I'm going to skip it because it's not relevant. But the next relevant part is, in December 2018, Esquivel was accused by a woman, an ex-girlfriend if I remember correctly, of subjecting her to ongoing sexual and emotional abuse several years previously. He disputed her account of their interaction. His creative collaborators, which would mean Ramon and Tamara, withdrew from the project. They withdrew from Border Town. So when Esquivel, right, was being accused, they didn't do the heroic thing and stand by him, given that it was just accusations. I don't think anything was ever definitively proven, though Eric didn't help himself with his, well, I got the wrong lessons from male characters such as James Bond and Gene Simmons response. Yes, he literally said that. He blamed his bad boyfriend behavior on Gene Simmons and James Bond, right? But Tamara and Ramon ran the moment that he got accused. DC also ran because DC canceled the unpublished issues and accepted retailer returns of those that had been published. DC also canceled plans for Esquivel to take over their writing of the Nightwing series. Now, next point. In 2020, Esquivel announced Alternate Empire, a publishing venture with Eddie Berganza, who was terminated by DC in 2017 following sexual harassment allegations. Now let's look at Eddie Berganza. Eddie Berganza, right? So let's get down to the bottom. It says here, in 2012, Berganza was demoted to group editor after an alleged series of indiscretions. In 2016, Berganza's name was linked to reports of a DC employee accused of multiple incidents of sexual harassment. DC terminated his employment in November 2017, so Eddie lost his job because of these accusations and incidents of multiple harassment. Right? Then it says, in 2020, Berganza announced the formation of Alternate Empire, a publishing venture with Eric Esquivel, whose series Border Town was canceled by DC in 2018 following sexual harassment allegations. So let's go back to Ramon talking about the misinformation about him. First of all, I don't recall anybody talking about him in any substantial way when all of the stuff happened with Eric Esquivel and Border Town. People were mainly talking about Eric and his shifting the blame to the toxic male figures he had grown up with. But here's the thing. So, when Eric was accused, Ramon ran. He ran for the hills, and I don't mean like the Iron Maiden song. He ran, right? But when he, right, was caught up, I should say, and he claims that misinformation was spread about him. When he was caught up in a situation of a guilt by association, then it's, oh, people came to the wrong conclusions about me. right? As he says, that it was extremely easy to get mad at people who assumed bad things about him because of it, right? So he was associated with someone who was accused of sexual misconduct, who then went on to work with someone else who was accused of sexual misconduct to the point where he was fired, right? But when Ramon is involved, it was misinformation. He didn't stand by Eric, but it was misinformation. People came to the wrong conclusions about me. But when Jay Lee is hired for a job doing a cover for Ethan Van Sciver for his comic, which again, as I said in the other video, they have history. Jay Lee did a cover for Cyberfrog back in the mid-90s. Speaking of which, I need to amend something I said earlier. I've said in several videos that Cyberfrog back in the 90s was published by Image. I did further research on that. I was wrong. I was mistaken. I thought it was Image. I'm probably confusing it with like Savage Dragon. Image in general did comics like that back in the day. But it was actually published by Harris Comics. So while I have the chance on the video, let me just correct the record here. It was not Image. It wasn't published by Image Comics back in the day. Cyberfrog was published by Harris Comics back in the 1990s. Continuing. But as I said, so Jay Lee is connected, right? His guilt by association is that he did a cover for Ethan, who again, he had a previous relationship with, a previous history with. He does a cover for him. The man likes the cover. The fans like the cover. He's hired to do a job, but somehow he's in the wrong, right? You keep in mind, for all the criticisms and misgivings I have about Ethan Van Sciver, Ethan's never been accused of sexual misconduct of any kind, at least that I know of. And believe me, if it were out there, they would have put it out there. Anti-Comicsgate would have put it out there at some point. Ethan can be a diva. I think he can be a bully. And I don't like some of the stuff he has said and done online. In particular, as regards Tristan of Nerdette's Newsstand. But the man has never, ever, ever, to my knowledge, been accused of sexual harassment or anything particularly egregious. Right? Being a jerk and being a sexual harasser are two different things, I should say. One is nowhere near as severe as the other. But anyway, Jay Lee does the job he was hired for. But now, because we have to have Richard Pace saying that his cover, he needs to pull his cover from the leader of a hate group. No. The leader of the hate group here, Rich, you wouldn't exactly be the leader. You're just another flunky. I don't know who the leader is, but the hate group at this point is definitely the mainstream comics industry. The white supremacy is coming from the privileged white men in DC Comics. Not from Ethan, not from Comicsgate, from mainstream comics. Right? Then Villalobos goes on to say, I am filled with empathy for people who are suffering through real harassment that was only brought on because of bigoted persecution from absolute dickheads. I agree. I agree with that statement completely, except for one thing. He's directing that at Comicsgate and their supporters, while he should really be directing it back at himself and back at DC, because that's where the real harassment only brought on by bigoted persecution is coming from. This was started by Tom King. Not Jay, not Ethan, Tom King. DC. DC employee started this. Second, empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. That doesn't mean you have to like the person. That doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It means you have to be able to understand and feel for them. Something that, in my opinion, Villalobos and Pace and Tim, I think I'm Japanese, Doyle, have completely lost or forgotten. Or they only display it when the person being hurt is someone of their own kind, of their own tribe, right? But when it's someone who is not on their side, then it's you're evil and we're going to shame you. The only persons who should be ashamed are DC and Tom King and everybody who thinks that doing this to Jay Lee is a proper response. Those are the ones who should be ashamed. Now, people like Jay Lee, they are the ones who deserve empathy. And that's why I'm not shutting up about this. Then we have Richard Pace retweeting Chris Arant. I don't know who the hell Chris is, don't care. But he says, F Comicsgate. Well, him and Frank Cho have something in common. Frank also said a few years ago to F Comicsgate. And you know what? As much as I like Frank's work, and this will forever be how I see Carol Danvers, you know what? If Frank wants to F Comicsgate, and Chris wants to F Comicsgate, and all these other mainstream pros want to F Comicsgate, first of all, I don't think anybody in Comicsgate wants to sleep with you. And number two, here's a Stone Cold salute from Stone Cold Steve Austin to Frank and to Chris and to the mainstream industry. Enjoy. Now, this is actually a clip from my Google Play library. And I'm showing this for a reason. You see books 3 and 4, the Power Girl books, the Power Girl Power Trip collection, and the Harley Quinn Power Girl. Those are the last comics I purchased several years ago. I, a beloved, unabashed Marvel fangirl, last bought DC because I liked the story and I liked the characters, and I wasn't aware as of yet just how disgusting the industry had become. But these are the last two I purchased. And these will continue to be the last two that I purchase until DC, Marvel, and the mainstream industry either clean up their act or the industry dies. One way or another, this disgusting debauchery of victim behavior while you oppress and harass and victimize others needs to end. And comics, mainstream comics, will not get a dime out of me until they clean up their act. So these will continue to be the last DC books that I paid for. Didn't say last I read, but they are the last I paid for. Going through this, I was reminded of a song by Garbage. Garbage is one of my favorite bands, right? The song is Stupid Girl. And this is some lyrics from the chorus, and I think it fits a lot with how DC, or rather certain people in DC like Tom King, and how, again, Richard Pace and Tim Doyle and others have been responding to the Jay Lee situation, right? Don't believe in fear, don't believe in faith, don't believe in anything that you can't break. That's what this is about. If they cannot control Jay Lee, they will shame him until he bends and he breaks. That's what they want. This is about control. This isn't about humanity, or empathy, or sympathy, or reasonableness. This is about control. They don't have control over him, so they're going to try to shame him and break him and ruin his life to get it. Right? Now, here's the thing. I wanted to show this clip because I generally, rather this tweet I should say, because I generally agree with it. While I think Comicsgate is for everyone who doesn't criticize Uncle Sunbeam, but I do agree, generally speaking, that, yeah, for a hate group, Comicsgate's incredibly diverse, and that it stands as a meritocracy. And here's the thing, and I want to point this out. There is what's what I'm looking for, an audience still for comics, right? Ethan's Cyberfrog projects, right? Over $1 million, right? As he says here, the biggest crowd-funded comic of all time. Then you have Jawbreakers and several other campaigns, which has done over 400 grand. You have Cash Grab, which got over 200 grand. There is quite obviously an audience here, an audience that's willing to pay good money. An audience that's willing to pay good money for good comics that are entertaining to them. Okay, the money's there. The mainstream has simply turned away all of the pros, not the pros, sorry, turned away all of the customers. One second. Excuse me. They've turned away all of the customers who would buy something. Keep in mind, an Indiegogo book is not cheap. It starts out for most of these at least at $25, and I know this because I ordered Jawbreakers back when it came out, right? So $25. There are people who are willing to spend at the bare minimum $25 for these projects. Yet, as we can see, over 200 grand, over 400 grand, over $1 million, and it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going, because the silent majority are simply just going to go to Indiegogo to get their comic fix. They're going to go to Comicsgate to get their comic fix, because the pros are not providing good content anymore. They've allowed their egotism and their hatred to override any and everything else to their own detriment, right? So while Cecil and Ethan and Rich and others involved in their projects continue to make money, as fans spend good money and get quality product back, we're going to have Richard Pace online demanding that Jay Lee call for a project that he did that he was hired for to be taken down. Because apparently he thinks Jay Lee is just like Dynamite Comics and is just going to kowtow and bow to people who would never take him back anyway. For Mr. Lee's sake, I hope he is strong enough to withstand this. Both the Lost Fist Puppy, this drama, and the disgusting white supremacy expressed by mainstream comics, in particular by DC Comics. So that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. I don't know if it'll be about Jay Lee again, but there will be a next one. Probably in a few days, because I kind of wore myself out. Anyhow, see you around. Bye.